Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we delve into a tale of love, betrayal, deception, and ultimate resilience. Prepare to be captivated by a whirlwind of secrets and schemes that will test the very bonds of marriage and family. Let's unravel this dramatic saga together. The narrative mistress framed pregnant wife for cheating. Millionaire's DNA test shocked everyone. Her world came crashing down when whispers of betrayal echoed through the mansion's marbled halls. Alicia, heavily pregnant and married to the powerful millionaire Harold Lancaster, found herself at the center of a raging storm of suspicion. Somewhere in the shadows, a cunning mistress pulled the strings, spreading rumors that Alicia had cheated, discrediting her loyalty to the husband who cherished her. But scandal had an unexpected price when a DNA test threatened to expose secrets no one had imagined. Every lie, every hidden truth, and every twisted scheme unraveled in spectacular fashion. Little did they all know, destiny had its own plan for justice. The Lancaster name bore a legacy of power, influence, and most of all, unimaginable wealth. Harold Lancaster was the last descendant in a prestigious line of real estate magnates who had shaped Chicago's skyline. The family had invested in everything from towering office complexes to luxury hotels. One of their crown jewels was a long-standing partnership with the Drake Hotel, a real landmark that anchored them in the city's history and furthered their reputation among the elite. Harold had always felt both pride and burden from his family's legacy. He was an intelligent man in his mid-30s, measured in his words and methodical in his actions. His presence emanated authority, and he balanced confidence with a certain humility, an increasingly rare quality in a man of his status. Though he could have had any woman he desired, Harold allowed love to guide him when he met Alicia Evans. Alicia was an elementary school teacher by profession, a woman who found tremendous joy in shaping young minds. Raised in a close-knit middle-class family in Chicago's suburbs, she had little in common with the glamorous socialites typically found on Harold's arm, but her bright blue eyes sparkled with an unassuming warmth and sincerity that immediately drew him in. They first met at a charity gala championing childhood literacy, where Alicia's genuine passion for the cause moved Harold in a way no shallow party girl ever had. Not only was she gorgeous, with her soft brown hair framing her graceful features, but she possessed a heart that resonated with empathy and kindness. Within a year, their whirlwind romance culminated in a lavish wedding ceremony held at the Lancaster family estate. It was the talk of the town. Glistening chandeliers, rose-adorned arches, and a grand reception hall welcomed hundreds of guests ranging from Chicago's elite to Alicia's humble neighbors, because Alicia refused to keep her old world separate. She believed in unity, in bridging gaps between people, and Harold admired this quality in her. They spent a blissful honeymoon overseas, exploring the romantic canals of Venice and the sun-soaked beaches of Greece, forging memories they believed would last a lifetime. Despite her shift from teacher to wife of a high-profile businessman, Alicia remained grounded. She continued her philanthropic pursuits, involving herself with local charities and children's education programs. She seldom indulged in the extravagant lifestyle the Lancaster fortune provided. Harold, for his part, reveled in spoiling her, though her modesty often made it difficult. She was more inclined to volunteer on the weekends than attend lavish parties. Yet Harold respected her independence and the fact that their worlds were so different. He saw in her all that was good and genuine, a reminder of life beyond corporate deals and cutthroat negotiations. This tranquil tableau changed dramatically with the news of Alicia's pregnancy. When they discovered she was expecting, Harold nearly cried with joy. He had everything he could ever want, except a child of his own. The idea of continuing the Lancaster legacy with a little one was thrilling to him, while Alicia felt the moment was perfect to start a family. Their days became filled with doctor's appointments, nursery plans, and all the secret hopes parents share in hushed conversations after midnight. But as the weeks drifted into months, they also found themselves drifting into certain complexities. Harold's real estate empire demanded more of his time, especially with a major urban development project in the works. This project, a towering set of luxury apartments near Millennium Park, had become Harold's obsession. He envisioned it as the defining achievement of his career, an architectural masterpiece that would outshine even the family's prior accomplishments. And so, nights once spent laughing together in the living room and planning for their baby often saw Harold stuck in the downtown office. He would return in the early hours of the morning, slump into bed, and slip away again before Alicia awakened. She understood the burden of his responsibilities, but couldn't shake the loneliness creeping into her heart. Quiet dinners for two turned into solitary meals for one. She consoled herself by focusing on her pregnancy, forging a healthy routine, prenatal yoga classes, charity events, and reading every baby book she could get her hands on. She found solace in writing letters to her unborn child, notes filled with warmth, excitement, and motherly advice. She would tuck these letters into a locked keepsake box in the nursery, planning one day to gift them when her little one was old enough to understand. She never complained openly to Harold, trusting that he did his best to juggle everything and that their love would remain stronger than the demands placed upon them. Yet in this gap formed by her acceptance and his ambition, something dangerous began to bloom. A single seed of trouble was enough for cunning opportunists to exploit, and so it began, the orchestration of the greatest betrayal Alicia would ever experience. Among Harold's staff was Vanessa Pierce, a stunningly beautiful and impeccably dressed financial consultant. She was hired 6 months before Alicia announced her pregnancy, her job to refine the company's investment strategies and oversee new partnerships. Vanessa was no ordinary hire. She possessed a razor-sharp intellect that matched her alluring exterior. Her honey blonde hair cascaded effortlessly around her shoulders, and her eyes sparkled with ambition. Vanessa had known from the moment she stepped into Lancaster and Company that she was destined for bigger things than her humble upbringing had predicted. She latched on to every high-value project, staying late whenever Harold did, and offering strategic insights that often captured his attention. With Alicia at home, their interactions at the office grew more frequent. Long meetings, late-night brainstorming sessions, working dinners to secure deals. Vanessa found any excuse to remain in Harold's orbit. Even the slightest personal detail about him seemed to fascinate her: his favorite coffee, the brand of his watch, his dietary preferences. She learned every aspect of his routine. Harold, exhausted by the mountainous workload, appreciated Vanessa's dedication to the job. She challenged him with bold ideas and had a knack for reading market trends that made her invaluable. He recognized she was quite beautiful, but he initially saw her attractiveness as a pleasant bonus to her unwavering work ethic, not the reason for her success. He certainly noticed how easily she laughed at his jokes, how intently she gazed at him in board meetings, and how she praised his every decision with glowing admiration. Sometimes he'd remind himself that Alicia waited at home and quickly reasserted boundaries, but as the weeks turned into months, with Harold buried in the stress of finalizing crucial development deals, those boundaries began to waver. Vanessa sensed his vulnerability, and she exploited it. Whenever she saw him physically or mentally drained, she'd appear with a freshly brewed coffee or an encouraging word, carefully pushing aside any mention of Alicia or the pregnancy. She inched her way into Harold's personal life, casually dropping hints about her own struggles, claiming she worked too hard to maintain a relationship and that she felt lonely in the city. She positioned herself as a confidant, offering advice and always making herself indispensable. Harold did not see what Alicia, in the back of her mind, suspected. Alicia sometimes caught glimpses of Vanessa at corporate events, how she hovered near Harold, giggling at his every joke, and how her eyes were always scanning the room as though calculating the next move in a chess game. Alicia, trusting her husband wholeheartedly, never voiced her concerns. She felt it would be petty, that it might reflect insecurity or mistrust. Instead, she tried to reassure herself that Harold was dedicated to his family. But the unfortunate truth is that Vanessa was no typical employee. She harbored deep ambitions, not only for her career, but also for herself. She lusted after Harold's power and wealth and convinced herself that she was the better partner for him, someone sophisticated and business savvy in her mind, far more suited to his high-flying world than a simple teacher turned wife. What she failed to see was the genuine goodness in Alicia, or how deeply Harold's love for her ran. Vanessa believed that, given the right opportunity, she could overshadow Alicia entirely. And so, in a moment of Harold's intense stress, right before closing a pivotal development deal, Vanessa made her move. She found him alone in a conference room, his tie loosened, his expression weary. She cradled his face, whispering honeyed words about how she admired him, how strong and brilliant he was, how she had never met anyone who inspired her as much. Harold's defenses, worn down by pressure and emotional distance from Alicia, faltered. He remembered that fleeting moment where he kissed Vanessa, a swirling haze of guilt and longing washing over him. In the very next breath, remorse consumed him, and he pulled away. But for Vanessa, that moment was the breakthrough she'd been orchestrating from the start. Even if Harold tried to maintain distance after that, the line had been crossed. Eventually, stolen kisses grew more frequent. After particularly grueling days, he would sink into Vanessa's arms as though it were some twisted respite from the reality he felt he couldn't escape. A whirlwind affair began, one that Vanessa believed would end in a ring on her finger, and Alicia cast aside. Yet Harold, riddled with shame, hid it behind an endless string of excuses. Deep down, he never once considered leaving Alicia or betraying the child she carried. He saw his fling with Vanessa as a toxic escape, a sin he rationalized as temporary, unaware of the extent of Vanessa's manipulative nature. He believed he was still in control. Little did he know the trap was already set. Alicia could sense that something was amiss. Longer nights at the office, that faint trace of unfamiliar perfume lingering on Harold's suits, the way he never quite met her eyes anymore. But she refused to think the worst. She attributed his distance to the demands of business. She still believed in Harold's inherent goodness and had no reason to suspect betrayal. She told herself that all couples go through rough patches, especially during pregnancy. Despite Harold's emotional absence, Alicia's routine remained anchored by positivity. Every morning, she would speak to her unborn child, reciting lines from her favorite children's books or humming lullabies. She volunteered at the local youth center, teaching reading comprehension and creative writing. Children flocked to her, appreciating her warmth and patience. In a sense, her philanthropic work filled the void left by Harold's new routine. Meanwhile, Vanessa's hold on Harold tightened. She carefully calculated each step to keep him tethered. Yet, in her scheming mind, simply being his mistress wasn't enough. She wanted to eliminate Alicia altogether. No half measures or illusions of a second life. She yearned to become the new Mrs. Lancaster. She studied Alicia from afar, gleaning every detail of her personality. She scanned social media, local news bulletins featuring Alicia's charity work, and even tried to network with Alicia's acquaintances under the pretense of business. Through these channels, she discovered a crucial piece of information. Alicia cherished her reputation and her family's good standing above nearly everything else. Vanessa's cunning found an entry point. If she could destroy Alicia's reputation, even make it seem she had been unfaithful to Harold, the resulting scandal might push Harold to divorce her. That would leave the path wide open for Vanessa. She started weaving a plan, sowing suspicion in the minds of Harold's peers, circulating rumors within the social circles that Alicia was unfaithful. If enough people believed it, even Harold, wrapped in his own guilt, might succumb to the narrative. Her first step was subtle. She whispered to a couple of lesser-known employees that Alicia was often seen around town with a man who wasn't her husband. The rumor, though wholly fabricated, moved quickly among the staff. Harold noticed offhand remarks from colleagues about Alicia, but he dismissed them until one day an anonymous message appeared in his private email accusing Alicia of scandalous behavior. The email included pictures that at first glance showed Alicia embracing a man outside a local cafe. In reality, the images were heavily doctored. The background was the same cafe Alicia often visited, but the man's face was turned away, making it impossible to verify who he was. The photo suggested an intimate moment, but there was no conclusive proof. Harold felt conflicted. He trusted Alicia, but a whisper of uncertainty, fueled by his own guilt for cheating, gnawed at him. What if Alicia had found solace elsewhere? He hated the thought, but couldn't completely dismiss it. Alicia noticed his mood swings, his questions about her whereabouts, his suspicious glances whenever she checked her phone. She grew uneasy, sensing something was badly wrong, but unsure of the cause. Vanessa was thrilled by the effect of her initial seeds of chaos. Yet to truly topple Alicia, she needed something more damning, a staged incident perhaps, that would leave no room for doubt. She hatched a dangerous scheme to catch Alicia in a compromising position with a man. All she needed was the perfect pawn. Her eyes settled on Gregory Marsh, an old acquaintance from her days working at a financial firm downtown. He had gambling debts and a questionable moral compass. If she paid him enough or promised him an easy way out of his debts, Vanessa was certain he'd do just about anything. So she arranged a meeting. She laid out the plan in guarded tones, convinced Gregory to flirt with Alicia, to show up at her usual spots, and manipulate a scenario where Alicia would be alone with him, ideally at a bar or somewhere she might not expect. Vanessa wanted pictures, actual photographs or videos that could be manipulated into looking like evidence of an affair. In exchange, Vanessa provided Gregory with a lump sum to clear some of his debts, plus an additional bonus if the plan succeeded. So, one Friday evening, Alicia decided to meet a close friend, Paula, at a neighborhood cafe for a quiet dinner. Her friend canceled last minute due to a family emergency. Alicia, disheartened but still craving a bite to eat, decided to stay. As she dined alone, she found herself politely engaging in conversation with a stranger named Gregory, who introduced himself as a casual coffee enthusiast. At first, Alicia found nothing suspicious about the man. He was friendly, seemed genuinely interested in her volunteer work, and they ended up chatting about the local community center. Unbeknownst to Alicia, Gregory was systematically laying traps. He offered to walk her to her car, claiming to be concerned for a pregnant woman walking alone at night. Although Alicia was hesitant, she appreciated the courtesy. The moment they stepped into the dimly lit parking area, a figure lurking in the shadows began snapping photos. Gregory made sure to angle himself close to Alicia, almost holding her elbow under the guise of helping her navigate the sidewalk. The camera captured the angle so it looked as though they were intimately holding hands or embracing. Alicia, naive to the setup, simply thanked him, parted ways, and drove home. By the time Alicia arrived, the photos were already on Vanessa's phone. She smiled like a cat that had cornered its prey. The next phase of her plan was to ensure these images made their way to the right rumor mills, eventually landing on Harold's desk. In a flash, Alicia's image would be tarnished beyond repair, just as Vanessa intended. Within days, Harold received another anonymous tip, this time with crisp, clear photos of Alicia with Gregory in the parking lot. The moment angled so Alicia's expression of gratitude was twisted into a gesture of intimacy. Shock, confusion, and a roaring jealousy overtook Harold. The pang of guilt for his own affair with Vanessa clashed with a furious sense of betrayal. How dare Alicia do this to him while carrying his child? At first, he confronted Alicia with trembling anger. He couldn't keep the photos to himself, throwing them onto the kitchen table. He demanded an explanation. Alicia, appalled and reeling, stared at the images in disbelief. She tried to recall the night, the fleeting dinner alone after Paula canceled, the man who walked her to her car. Yes, that was him, but Alicia knew she had done nothing improper. She tried to explain the situation in a calm, measured voice, emphasizing how she had only met the man that night and had no idea who he was. In her desperation to prove her innocence, Alicia told Harold to call Paula. Paula confirmed that she had indeed canceled their dinner at the last minute. Alicia even asked Harold to check the messages she had sent to Paula before and after, but Harold, still in a tempest of emotion, found the photographic evidence overwhelmingly convincing. Guilt over his own duplicity clouded his ability to see reason. He left Alicia trembling in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face, and spent the night at his penthouse office. Meanwhile, Vanessa skillfully fanned the flames. She comforted Harold, listening to his rants about betrayal and heartbreak, carefully directing him to see Alicia's alleged unfaithfulness as an undeniable fact. He would hold his head in his hands, lamenting how the woman he loved, who was supposed to be devoted to him, could do something so underhanded. Vanessa disguised her triumph behind sympathetic gestures, urging Harold to consider a formal separation for his own emotional well-being and hinting that Alicia's baby might not even be his. This insinuation hit Harold like a bullet. The baby was the center of his dreams, and the possibility of the child not being his turned confusion into a dark swirl of emotions, each more destructive than the last. Vanessa kept pushing, singing in his ear that he should arrange a prenatal paternity test to confirm once and for all. Even if it was invasive, it would clear the air about the child's parentage. Desperate for certainty, Harold found himself agreeing. When Harold presented the idea of a prenatal DNA test to Alicia, she was horrified. She insisted there was no need. The baby was unequivocally his. But Harold, fueled by the rumors and doctored evidence, demanded it. Hurt and humiliated, Alicia grudgingly complied, hoping it might finally lift the cloud of suspicion. The test was scheduled at a reputable clinic overseen by a prominent specialist. Though Alicia trembled at the thought of any invasive procedure, her motivation to clear her name outweighed her fears. She wept quietly in the waiting room, the swirl of clinical white walls feeling alien and cold. But she still clung to the hope that the test result would force Harold to see the truth. Perhaps he would realize his accusations were groundless and things could return to normal. She still had no clue how manipulative Vanessa truly was, but Vanessa, cunning as ever, wanted to leave nothing to chance. She needed that test to come out inconclusive, or ideally negative, for Harold's paternity. If the results showed Harold wasn't the father, Alicia would be irreparably tarnished, likely cast out of Harold's life. She needed a way to sabotage the lab process or swap the samples. She decided to approach a lab technician named Carl Brooks, who was known to her through a mutual acquaintance in the medical field. Carl was struggling financially, and with the right amount of money and some veiled threats, Vanessa believed she could make him tamper with the test. In a discreet meeting, Vanessa laid out her demands. Ensure that the test results do not confirm Harold Lancaster as the father. She offered Carl a hefty sum of cash, enough to settle his crushing debts. Though he was initially appalled by the request, the promise of easy money lured him in. He rationalized it as a victimless crime, something that might be undone in the future if it even came to light. He rationalized that no real harm would come to the unborn child, since, presumably, it was just a matter of a piece of paper. Besides, he thought, powerful men in Chicago meddled with paperwork all the time. Why should he jeopardize his future for a pregnant stranger he had never met? The day of the appointment, Alicia's blood sample was obtained under strict supervision. Harold provided his own DNA sample shortly afterward. The clinic staff were known for their professionalism and confidentiality. Unbeknownst to them, Carl had access to critical parts of the testing pipeline. Late at night, after the official lab staff had gone, he logged into the system, carefully altering the data. He replaced Harold's sample ID with another random patient's data, effectively ensuring the final report would indicate no match. Vanessa's instructions were clear. The results must show that Harold Lancaster is not the father. This unscrupulous act set the stage for a catastrophic confrontation. A few days later, Harold received a call from the specialist, who sounded perplexed. The doctor informed him that the test showed zero probability of paternity. Confusion gave way to anger, and then crushing disappointment. Alicia, distraught and unable to fathom how such a result could be, begged the doctor to retest the samples or check for errors, but the clinic staff insisted their procedures were foolproof. Without suspecting sabotage, they trusted the accuracy of their system. For Alicia, it was like stepping into a nightmare. She had no idea how to prove her innocence in the face of what seemed like irrefutable scientific evidence. She tried to plead with Harold, reminding him that these test results must be flawed. She demanded another test or an investigation, but Harold, stung by heartbreak, refused to hear her out. He felt deeply betrayed, not only because Alicia stood accused of cheating, but also because she seemed to be lying outright about it. In his mind, the scientific data couldn't lie. When Alicia insisted on retesting, Harold's anger spilled over. He accused her of wanting to doctor the second round, manipulating the results for her own gain. He told her bluntly that he was done. If the child wasn't his, he would proceed with a divorce. Devastated, Alicia collapsed into tears. In one fell swoop, she faced the prospect of losing her husband, her good name, and the stable home she had built for her unborn baby. This was what Vanessa had wanted all along. She didn't even try to hide her pleasure. She remained by Harold's side, offering what appeared to be genuine concern. Publicly, she kept a respectful distance, but in private, she guided him to file for divorce. "You deserve better," she told him repeatedly, painting Alicia as the duplicitous wife who had humiliated him. As rumors spread throughout the Lancaster Mansion staff and the city's social circles, Alicia found herself cast as the adulteress. Even her close friends grew confused, bombarded by the scandalous gossip. Some stood by her, but others distanced themselves, fearful of associating with a rumored cheat. Alicia felt utterly alone. Harold was a man haunted. His nights were filled with restless attempts to make sense of how his once perfect marriage had fallen apart. The official separation process began. He moved permanently into his penthouse downtown, while Alicia stayed in the mansion, a cold, empty space absent of Harold's presence. Each day, a stack of legal documents piled up, demanding her signature, detailing the dissolution of their marital union, the division of assets, and custody terms for the unborn child once it arrived. Tormented by heartbreak, Harold's behavior became erratic. Sometimes he would show up in the middle of the night, hammered by regret, pounding on the mansion door, demanding an explanation. Alicia, always hopeful he'd come to his senses, would wake from uneasy sleep and let him in, only for him to accuse her again before storming out. In these heated exchanges, Alicia could see how deeply the false evidence had burrowed into Harold's mind. Yet ironically, Harold was still entangled with Vanessa, although he couldn't bring himself to proclaim her as his official partner, perhaps out of residual guilt. Alicia's health suffered. Stress weighed heavily on her, manifesting in difficulty sleeping, lack of appetite, and constant worry about her baby's well-being. She desperately sought professional counsel, seeking ways to prove the paternity test was wrong, but the legal machinery moved slowly, and she lacked the influence to immediately challenge the clinic's procedures. She even considered going to a different medical center for a new test, only to find that Harold refused to cooperate. Without his DNA sample, no reputable lab would proceed. Alicia was trapped, her belly growing bigger by the day, her morale shrinking with each passing week. Vanessa's hold on Harold seemed to grow stronger. She convinced him to rely on her for emotional support and business decisions. He began introducing her at corporate functions as a valued colleague, though many whispered behind closed doors that she was the mistress who had replaced Alicia. Even the final stages of the major urban development project were overshadowed by the scandal. Vanessa played the role of the polished businesswoman, always at Harold's side, while Alicia's name was conspicuously absent. The future that Alicia and Harold had once dreamed of, welcoming a baby into a loving home, was a distant memory. In an attempt to preserve her sanity, Alicia turned to her closest friend, Paula, who suggested she hire a private investigator to dig into the events surrounding the paternity test. Alicia felt torn. She believed in honesty and never dreamed she'd need to spy on anyone, but the avalanche of suspicion demanded extreme measures. With Paula's help, she found Ryan Blackwood, a former police detective with a reputation for uncovering hidden truths. He listened intently to Alicia's tearful account, scribbling notes on a small notepad. Ryan's first question was the same. Alicia had been asking herself, why would the test fail to show Mr. Lancaster as the father? Alicia poured out her suspicions of foul play, with no definitive leads but a strong intuition. Ryan started investigating. He interviewed staff at the clinic, examined procedural records, and carefully reviewed the chain of custody for the DNA samples. He requested to see security footage from the night they were tested, but the clinic told him that cameras in those specific labs weren't always monitored during after hours. Then, a glimmer of hope emerged. One of the late shift employees recalled an unusual instance where Carl Brooks stayed behind well after everyone else had gone home. This hadn't been logged properly, but the employee remembered it because Carl had borrowed her ID badge under the excuse that he had forgotten his. Ryan made a note of this detail. What business would Carl have with a borrowed ID, especially given the serious protocols around a high-profile test like Harold Lancaster's? Ryan pressed further, requesting an interview with Carl, but Carl dodged him with vague excuses. The more Ryan probed, the more suspicious Carl's behavior became. After some persuasion and a few veiled references to potential legal consequences, Ryan confronted Carl directly, laying out the possibility that tampering with medical records constituted a severe crime. Um, Nervous and cornered, Carl cracked under pressure. In a trembling confession, he admitted that a woman had approached him to alter the test results. While he didn't know her identity at first, further nudging revealed that he recognized her as someone associated with Harold Lancaster. He recalled overhearing her mention the Drake Hotel, part of the Lancaster family's holdings, making the connection that she was no ordinary outsider. Ryan pried for more details until Carl finally named Vanessa Pierce. He even produced text messages from an untraceable number, messages that Ryan could forensically link to Vanessa's phone. The truth was there, ugly and shocking. The lab had been sabotaged. The child Alicia carried was most certainly Harold's. The test results were a lie. Armed with new evidence, Ryan called Alicia to set up a meeting in a small conference room he rented downtown. He laid out the entire case. Alicia's eyes widened in disbelief and relief as she listened. The swirl of heartbreak and injustice threatened to overwhelm her, yet she felt a surge of hope. If they could prove Vanessa's involvement, they could clear Alicia's name and show that the child was indeed Harold's. Ryan had advised Alicia to be cautious. If they confronted Vanessa without a thorough plan, she might destroy or deny any evidence linking her to the crime. Ryan wanted to gather more, possibly even getting Vanessa on tape admitting her role. Alicia, eager to end this nightmare, agreed, though she struggled with the idea of more deceit. But there was no other way to fully expose the truth. They hatched a plan. Ryan discovered that Vanessa had a penchant for pricey champagne and exclusive gatherings. She often visited a chic lounge near the Magnificent Mile to network with wealthy clients. Through an elaborate ruse, Ryan arranged a meeting there, posing as a potential investor for one of Lancaster and Company's upcoming ventures. Vanessa, always hungry for new opportunities, agreed to a private conversation. Ryan wore a hidden recorder, hoping to subtly steer the conversation towards the paternity test scandal. That evening, Vanessa arrived in a sleek black dress, her eyes shining with confidence. After they exchanged pleasantries, Ryan steered the discussion from business to personal matters, hinting that he'd heard rumors about Alicia and the fiasco at the clinic. Vanessa took the bait. With a dismissive flick of her hair, she belittled Alicia's character, snidely implying that the scandal had put Harold in a position where he'd soon be free to move on. Ryan pressed gently, indicating he'd heard rumblings that the test results might not be real. Could there have been creative solutions to ensure the outcome favored Harold? Vanessa flashed a cunning smile. She had no idea she was being recorded. She boasted about how no test result is absolute when you have the right leverage. Though she never explicitly admitted bribing Carl, her words strongly hinted that she had orchestrated the deception for Harold's benefit. By carefully guiding the conversation, Ryan extracted enough veiled admissions to corroborate Carl's confession. Meanwhile, Alicia waited nervously at a nearby cafe, biting her nails, praying that Ryan's plan would work. When Ryan rejoined her, he played back the recording. It wasn't a full-blown admission, but it was damning enough to piece together with Carl's confession. Alicia's hands trembled as she listened to Vanessa's haughty tone, enraged by how she had so flippantly ruined Alicia's life for personal gain. But relief soon replaced her fury. She finally had proof. With the evidence firmly in hand, Alicia and Ryan approached Harold. This time, they chose a setting that Harold wouldn't be able to dismiss, a boardroom in Lancaster and Company, where Harold found himself with minimal distractions. Harold was guarded, having refused to meet Alicia alone, but when Ryan introduced himself as Alicia's private investigator and mentioned the sabotage, Harold's attention was piqued. Ryan laid out the entire timeline, from Vanessa's hidden manipulations to Carl's confession and the damning recording. Harold sat stunned into silence as puzzle pieces realigned in his mind. The overhead lights cast harsh reflections on the polished table, every word echoing in the hush of the room. With trembling hands, Alicia produced the documented statement from Carl, along with transcripts of the text messages. The final blow was the recorded conversation from the lounge. Though Vanessa hadn't explicitly spelled it out, her bravado made her complicity unmistakable. Harold's initial reaction was devastation. He realized he had fallen into a carefully laid trap, all because of his own guilt from the affair and the lingering distrust he felt. The shame and regret that assaulted him were overwhelming. He stared at Alicia, remembering her tears, her pleas, her unwavering insistence that she had never betrayed him. How had he allowed himself to believe those twisted rumors? How had he not seen the treachery swirling around him? Sorrow shifted into fury. Vanessa had not merely manipulated him, she had tried to destroy his marriage, break his family, and sabotage the paternity of his own child. Harold demanded that Alicia give him one more chance. He begged her forgiveness, apologizing profusely for his blindness and the emotional torment he had subjected her to. But the pain Alicia felt ran deep. The shock that Harold had so easily turned on her, and the heartbreak of dealing with the humiliation alone, were not wounds easily healed. She remained composed yet visibly distraught, uncertain how to reconcile the betrayal. Harold, eager to right the wrongs, insisted on an immediate legitimate paternity test at a different clinic under the strictest supervision. This time, Alicia agreed, though she made it clear this was more about confirming the truth for their child's sake than for him. Harold also vowed to press charges against Carl and sue Vanessa for her criminal involvement. Within a week, they had the new prenatal test done at a different reputable facility. The staff performed each step of the chain of custody meticulously, triple-checking the documentation. Finally, the report came in, a conclusive 99.99% match that Harold Lancaster was indeed the father. Alicia wasn't surprised, but she wept tears of relief. Harold, for his part, felt a flood of emotions, joy, guilt, and renewed anger at Vanessa's deception. The news of Vanessa's sabotage spread like wildfire through Lancaster and Company, the family mansion, and the city's elite circles. In mere days, Vanessa went from being Harold's treasured consultant to a pariah, avoided by colleagues and blocked from every project. Harold ordered an internal investigation to uncover any other unethical dealings or sabotage she might have perpetrated. He wanted her entire professional life dismantled, legally, of course, but thoroughly. Carl Brooks, confronted with potential criminal charges, testified under oath about Vanessa's bribe and the plan to switch the test samples. His confession was damning. Vanessa tried to wriggle out of the situation, claiming innocence, fabricating stories that she'd been framed herself. But the weight of evidence was too substantial. Carl's text messages and the recorded lounge conversation left her with no plausible defense. Simultaneously, Alicia's legal team filed a defamation suit against Vanessa for the emotional and reputational harm caused by her malicious acts. The case quickly garnered media attention. For a woman who thrived on social status and professional advancement, Vanessa found every door slammed in her face. No reputable firm would touch her, and her name became toxic in industry circles. Though she had stashed away the money extorted from Harold's business dealings, the mounting legal fees threatened to consume it quickly. She was forced to downsize her luxurious lifestyle, eventually moving to a modest apartment on the outskirts of town. The final blow came when the criminal investigations uncovered a history of suspicious financial maneuvers linked to Vanessa in prior firms. Connections to shady hedge funds and questionable overseas transactions emerged, implicating her in a potential web of illicit activity. Investigators pursued charges, culminating in Vanessa's arrest for fraud and tampering with medical records. She found herself in a bleak courtroom, her once glamorous persona reduced to a desperate figure in legal battles. No high-priced lawyer could salvage the mountain of evidence stacked against her. Meanwhile, Harold moved to sever all official ties with Vanessa, personally seeing to it that the internal board recognized the magnitude of her betrayal. He believed she should be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Despite his anger, a part of him reflected on his own culpability. He had strayed, opened the door to Vanessa's machinations, and then taken her word at face value over his wife's. The guilt was a shadow that trailed him everywhere. Alicia, though deeply hurt, felt a sense of closure watching Vanessa's downfall. Yet, it didn't erase the months of suffering or the near destruction of her marriage. She carried her child in a womb that had known heartbreak as well as hope. Even if justice was served, emotional scars remained. Her trust in Harold was badly shaken, and only time would tell if it could be rebuilt. In the final month of her pregnancy, Alicia focused on her health and emotional well-being. She retreated to her parents' home in the suburbs, seeking the comfort of familiar surroundings. She needed space, space to think, to heal, and to decide whether Harold deserved a second chance. Her family rallied around her, providing the support and love she had missed in recent months. Harold, desperate to mend the relationship, reached out to Alicia daily, offering apologies, sending letters, and even trying to attend therapy sessions alone to understand the root of his flaws. He acknowledged everything: his affair with Vanessa, his gullibility in believing Alicia was unfaithful, and his negligence in his duties as a husband. He had see he had severed any illusions of continuing the affair once the truth emerged, but the damage was done. The question remained: would Alicia allow him back into her life now that the baby was due any day? The baby's arrival loomed as a transformative event. Alicia's doctors recommended minimal stress in the final weeks, urging her to finally find a stable living arrangement. She was torn, remembering the intense love and joy she once shared with Harold versus the betrayal and heartbreak she had experienced. Her labor began unexpectedly one early morning after a night of restless dreams. Her parents rushed her to the hospital, panic mingling with anticipation. Somehow, Harold caught wind of it and sped through the city traffic to be by her side. When Alicia felt those first sharp contractions, she looked up to see him in the hospital room doorway, sweat beading on his brow, his eyes desperate for forgiveness. Though Alicia initially wanted to push him away, she found solace in his presence during the excruciating hours that followed. The sense of shared responsibility for the life they had created transcended the bitterness. In that hospital room, with the beeping monitors and the pungent smell of antiseptics, they held on to each other as Alicia labored through the pain. The moment their daughter was born, tiny, pink, and screaming with new life, they both broke down in tears. Harold cut the umbilical cord, his hands shaking. He held the baby girl, looking at Alicia with a mixture of gratitude and awe. In the innocence of their newborn's face, Alicia glimpsed the possibility of a fresh start. If not as a romantic couple, then at least as co-parents determined to provide a loving environment. In the days following the birth, Alicia allowed Harold to stay in the hospital room with her. She watched him cradle their daughter, singing lullabies in a voice quivering with both love and regret. He recounted every mistake he had made, asking forgiveness, not in words, but in tender gestures, fetching water for Alicia, adjusting her pillows, ensuring she had every comfort. She saw a genuine transformation in him, a raw vulnerability that was once hidden behind the polish of wealth and ego. Healing takes time, though. Alicia made it clear she needed space to process the trauma. For now, she would stay at her parents' place to care for the baby and reevaluate her relationship with Harold from a distance. She refused to let him be absent from their daughter's life, yet she wasn't ready to fully trust him again. Harold understood, agreeing to attend couples therapy if Alicia wished, and to do whatever was necessary to rebuild what he had so carelessly shattered. As the months passed, Vanessa Pierce's trial led to her conviction on multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and evidence tampering. She faced jail time, a once promising future dashed by her own greed and malice. In an ironic twist, the tabloids that once gossiped about Alicia's alleged affair turned the spotlight on Vanessa's crimes. Some speculated about who else she might have blackmailed or deceived, but public sentiment was unanimously against her. Vanessa, who once reveled in high society events and luxurious saris, now found herself in a cramped cell with a bleak horizon. For Alicia, life was far from the glamour of city galas. Her days were consumed by caring for her newborn daughter, whom she named Aurora, symbolizing a new dawn after the darkness she had endured. The child's bright eyes and gentle coos became Alicia's lifeline, a reminder that love could conquer even the ugliest betrayals. Harold visited frequently, carefully navigating Alicia's emotional boundaries. Each time he visited, he brought groceries, flowers for Alicia, or new baby items for Aurora. He spent hours holding Aurora, reading to her, changing diapers, and helping Alicia in every way possible. He also dove deeper into philanthropic work for single mothers and pregnant women in need, hoping to redeem himself by giving back. He renounced the cutthroat business approach he once embraced, re-entering Lancaster and Company around more ethical investments and corporate social responsibility. He resigned from any nightclubs or questionable clubs that had shaped his old identity, dedicating himself to being a better man. Those who observed Harold saw a man changed by heartbreak and fatherhood. He began attending therapy, confronting the insecurities and emotional emptiness that had allowed Vanessa to manipulate him. While Alicia didn't jump back into his arms, she appreciated the effort. Slowly, they rebuilt a semblance of trust. After 6 months, Alicia agreed to move back into a newly renovated wing of the Lancaster mansion, separate from Harold's quarters. She wanted Aurora to grow up with both parents close by, but she remained cautious, still unsure if she could fully open her heart again. Harold respected her boundaries and patiently worked for any small moment of closeness, hoping that with time, their bond would strengthen. When Aurora turned 1, Alicia noticed the sincerity in Harold's eyes, the way he consistently supported her without demanding anything in return. They had spent countless hours in therapy, unveiling layers of past pain and forging a pathway to mutual understanding. Alicia took a leap of faith and decided to try rebuilding their marriage. She didn't do it for illusions of wealth or for the sake of appearances, but because she saw a man who had learned from his mistakes, who was genuinely remorseful, and who valued his family above all else. Their reconciliation was not an overnight miracle. It was a fragile tapestry of trust, woven with patience, accountability, and unconditional love for their daughter. They renewed their vows in a small, intimate ceremony at Alicia's childhood church, attended by close family and friends. No extravagant fanfare, no lengthy guest lists, just a humble, heartfelt exchange of promises. This time, they both understood the gravity of those vows, having nearly lost each other to lies and manipulation. The Lancaster name, once dragged through scandal, found new respect in the eyes of the community. Harold's philanthropic initiatives, along with Alicia's unwavering dedication to children's education, cultivated a positive public image. The truth about the paternity scandal, once misconstrued, now stood as a testament to resilience and the power of redemption. In the end, what Vanessa orchestrated for destruction had blossomed into a second chance for Harold and Alicia. Karma had come for Vanessa, dealing her the consequences of her malicious deeds. Meanwhile, Alicia and Harold, though scarred, emerged wiser. Their story, a tapestry of betrayal and forgiveness, proved that even in a world of cunning deceptions, love and truth could still triumph, and that sometimes a relationship must be broken to be forged anew in the strongest possible form. Thank you for joining us through the twists and turns of this intense tale, where secrets, lies, and loyalty collided in the world of high society. Alicia and Harold's journey reminds us that truth will ultimately prevail, no matter how elaborate the deception. In the end, justice was served, karma found its mark, and a family once on the brink of destruction rediscovered hope. Stories like this captivate us because they show how resilience can overcome heartbreak and how love can flourish again, stronger than ever. If you found yourself absorbed by the drama, touched by the characters, or simply entertained by the roller coaster events, we invite you to hit that like button and share this video with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss another gripping story. Your support helps us continue sharing more heartfelt tales. Thank you, and see you next time.